So let's talk about the actual truth. Let's talk about the background of Abrego Garcia. This is Aaron Reichlin-Melnick, senior fellow of IMM's counsel, updating this timeline to fix a typo and error in the last box, presenting the full version of Mr. Abrego's time in the U.S. using court documents to explain the allegations of gang membership and what actually happened in his case. Here it is. Okay. Entry and early life. Hold on. 2011 to 2019. Okay. Kilmar Abrego Garcia flees El Salvador to the U.S. at the age of 16 after M18 gang members extort his family and threaten to kill him and rape his sisters if they didn't keep paying. He moves in with his U.S. citizen brother in Maryland and lives there without trouble for years. Then comes, on March 28th, 2019, the PGPD arrest. Kilmar is arrested for loitering outside of a Home Depot while looking for day labor. A Prince George's County Police Department detective grills him about whether he's a gang member. He denies any involvement. 4 hours later, he is transferred to ICE custody without the PGPD charging him for any offense. In April 2019, here are the allegations. At a bond hearing, ICE claims Kilmar is a part of MS-13. They submit one piece of evidence, a gang field interview sheet, a GFIS, filled out by the PGPD detective that claims Kilmar is a part of MS-13. The GFIS says he was wearing Chicago Bulls gear, and a confidential informant allegedly claimed that Kilmar was a ranking member of the Westerns clique, which is in Long Island. Except there's a problem there. Abrego has never been in Long Island. He's never been in New York at all. So this evidence is fabricated. And lo and behold, the local detective, as a matter of fact, that accused Mr. Abrego Garcia of being a member of MS-13 was suspended from the police force and indicted merely weeks later for providing confidential information to a sex worker who he was paying in exchange for sexual acts. That's right. I repeat, the cop who initially attested to Abrego Garcia's alleged MS-13 membership was subsequently suspended and indicted for serious professional misconduct. Remember, we're talking about a cop here, okay? If a police officer, a detective, is fired and suspended and indicted for misconduct, that means they must have gone above and beyond. Do you understand what I am saying? And the confidential informant that he used was also unreliable. The evidence itself that they presented was immediately disproven, and I'm going to get to in a second, okay? But remember, the Maryland police officer who formally attested to Abrego Garcia's supposed gang affiliation in 2019, when he was first detained the first time, was subsequently suspended from the police force for a serious transgression, giving confidential information about a case to a sex worker the New Republic has established. This officer, apparently a senior detective in Abrego Garcia's case in 2019, is named Ivan Mendez, according to information provided to Abrego Garcia's lawyer by, at the time, Lucia Cruel, who is also a member of his current legal team. Mendez was subsequently indicted for his offense, pleaded guilty, and received probation. So that's another thing. So let's continue. An investigation follows in the summer of 2019. Kilmar's lawyers reach out to the PGPD to investigate these claims. They find out that, one, police did not even file an incident report about his arrest, and two, the detective that had filled out the GFIS has been suspended for an unknown reason. We now know what the reason is. I just described to you what the reason is. In August 2019, there is an IJ decision. At his final bond hearing, ICE declines to offer any evidence of gang membership other than what is in the GFIS. The IJ denies bond, finding that the GFIS is sufficient proof of membership at the time, despite noting its obvious flaws. Kilmar appeals this decision to the Board of Immigration Appeals. Now, remember, the immigration courts are an extension of the federal government. They're an extension of ICE. Okay, so you have the process where you can appeal to the Board of Immigration Appeals, but ultimately this is somewhat irrelevant because the erroneous decision making there is it's basically an extension. It's a processor of what the federal government or what the immigration enforcement authorities want to do. That's all they're there to do. They're rubber stamping this stuff, okay? The immigration courts are under the DOJ. part of the executive branch and not under the judiciary. So just remember that. Having said that, the only reason why I'm mentioning this is because something silly and frivolous like this that is immediately disproven can still cause someone to basically be branded as a member of a fucking criminal organization when there's no evidence whatsoever for it. Okay? What is the point of those courts if they just 100% accept everything anyway? It's a way to create paperwork, so to show that there's some sort of process. It's the same principle behind FISA courts. The FISA courts are there to rubber stamp warrantless surveillance and offer them a warrant, right? But it's better that even that exists than not have it exist at all, if that makes sense. Although it is still a rubber stamp protocol, it's still good that even that rubber stamping of the protocol exists as opposed to not existing, because when it doesn't exist at all, then you have no paperwork, you have no way of holding up this process, you have no way of stopping these sorts of things from happening. Okay? Now, withholding when the immigration judge rules on October 2019 that Kilmar is ineligible for asylum because he filed the application too late, but the judge does grant withholding of removal, finding that it was more likely than not that he would be subject to persecution if deported to El Salvador. A removal order is issued, but with a restriction that one country he cannot be deported to is El Salvador. Okay? Then comes the BIA decision. The Board of Immigration Appeals decision in December 2019. Kilmar appeals the bond decision to the Board of Immigration Appeals. The appeals board declines to find clear error in the immigration judge's decision to rely on the GIFIS document. However, he is released anyway because he had won a withholding of removal. He returns to normal life from 2019 to 2025. By all reports, Kilmar lives a normal life in Maryland with his U.S. citizen wife, their biological son, and his two stepchildren, with the work permit he received as a result of his grant of withholding of removal. He works legally as a sheet metal worker, joins a union, and raises his family in a D.C. suburb. He doesn't get into any trouble with the law in these years. And then on March 2025, he gets sent to CCOT. On March 12, 2025, ICE and HSI agents arrest Kilmar in his car in front of his son. 3 days later, he's transferred to Texas, where, thanks to an admitted administrative error, he is put on a plane to El Salvador and sent to CCOT. So this is just a person that is married, that has immediate family members in the United States of America, that was falsely smeared as an MS-13 gang member, and every step of that process, there was enough evidence to suggest that not only was he not an MS-13 gang member, that he was directly at threat by MS-13 gang members if they were to send him back to El Salvador. Okay? If they were to send him back to El Salvador, that MS-13, he's so not MS-13 that they would kill him. That is what the courts have found. And yet, every single person still that, on the one hand, admit that they falsely deported him are simultaneously claiming that he is an MS-13 gang member, and also that it's good that he is in El Salvador, and there's no way to bring him back. Okay? In a normal process, in a just world, Abrego Garcia enters the United States fleeing El Salvador because of fleeing the gang violence in El Salvador, and expeditiously gets an asylum claim that is granted to him. Clearly, if there is a withholding of removal that a court gave him, that literally means that there is enough here, or more than an asylum application, as a matter of fact, more than just a simple asylum application. This means that there is additional evidence that he's presented as to why he cannot be deported to El Salvador, and that a judge oversaw this evidence and said, yes, there is enough evidence here for you not to be deported specifically to El Salvador. Okay? It's more than an asylum application. It is a higher standard to clear than an asylum application. It is shocking, I guess. I guess it's not really unexpected that the administration would be this careless and this inconsiderate because they are fascist. All right? But just so you know, when people say he is MS-13, that is a fucking lie. Okay? That's just a lie. He is so not MS-13 that he is directly in the crosshairs of MS-13, at least according to an immigration judge that said, we can't deport this man to El Salvador specifically. There's enough evidence here to suggest that we cannot, because he is so not MS-13, we cannot deport him to El Salvador because they'll fucking kill him in El Salvador if he goes there.